Good morning, everyone. Yes, so welcome to an amazing new week, an amazing new season. Happy Easter Monday to everyone. Yes, we are excited to celebrate in season. And with our autumn season, we continue with the attire of autumn and with our office voice during this season. For our discussion with leading this generation during this season, we want to focus on and we want to have our generation reminded of our opportunities, right? That we have within season to own our seat in our office environment, to own our seat with where we are at, to own our seat with how we are required to respond in our generation. And when we own our seat, we allow ourselves to learn to listen to that is gonna have you in the room, right? In the office where you are required to be at. And when you are reminded to be in your office, you are reminded to listen to the requirement of what your role requires of you. And in this season, while our generation has a leadership that are divided, that we have to decide how we are going to continue, because many of our leaders find themselves in roles and in leadership positions that they have really had to be siding with that was the choices before they came into leadership, right? Before they came into that the office environment, whether it's leading a country, they really had themselves involved in those roles by lots of circumstances and by lots of discussions and by lots of rules that requires our generation to be ruled in a certain way. And when some of our leaders really found themselves in rooms like that, it's sometimes challenging for them to stand up to that we require and that our generation require of them to really stand up for and to really listen to how they should actually lead our countries rather than what happened and rather than the rules set by generations before that, right? Because lots of our countries find themselves with parliamentary leaders that are set into the parliamentary house, but that are based on the requirements that history has revealed that certain offices should be managed at, right? And some of those officers has really been corrupted by a lot. And when our generation is corrupted in such a way, we do not say that our leaders that were leading, that everyone was on the wrong, right? Or everyone is on the wrong with where they are at. But what we are saying is that when our leaders in a season like this have to lead and have to own their seat being leaders, we require of them to listen to that requirement of our office in general, of our country in general, of what's required of them to do in their role in general, right? In their position that they are at in general. And we really want our leaders to not get to that they are agreed with what we are saying, right? We don't want them to misinterpret what we are requiring in our season. It is that there's a lot happening in our generation, and with all that is happening, we're gonna have to make a firm requirement for our countries to be led in a way that is gonna not be abusive, right? And we are very firm about that requirement. We are very firm about the fact that our countries are not individually standing only by themselves, that our countries our countries are dependent on the other, and our countries should not only learn to understand being dependent on someone else, right? You are sometimes our countries are dependent. If I just said independent, our countries are dependent on the other, and when our countries are dependent on the other, we have to allow ourselves to listen to not only wanting to affirm ourselves with countries that are first world countries, but to listen to our international nation in general, to listen to having to have your seat in the office in the United Nations and then having to find yourself in that role, that you listen to the requirement that is in the country that the United Nations officer reports to, right? We have United Nations officers and leaders that reports directly to certain countries, but we have certain countries and issues in certain countries that seems that the United Nations, we really can't say what it is that the United Nations stand for, right? And the governing body of the United Nations, how it is that they assist our countries, right? And we have United Nations people that are employed in our countries, in-house, that I remember South Africa the same, that when there's issues that relates to our that relates and that involves the international nation, then and that can involve the international nation, then we need our United Nations representatives to really communicate to the international parliamentary leaders so that our countries are not in that the world today everyone has to run out and has to be aggressed because of the circumstances of poverty and of abuse in countries. When we look at governing bodies like the United Nations and like what their requirements are, then we are required to have them affirm themselves not only to what they legislatively stand for, but to affirm themselves to what is the requirement of the international nation when they appoint and when the United Nations governing body lead and meets in their countries those requirements and those needs that needs to be responded to. And therefore we don't need people to we are excited to know that there's lots of people that are being employed, but we're gonna have to find out what is happening in office before we gonna continue with that is abusive to our countries, right? So we are excited to learn that everyone is eager to form part of a group like the United Nations, but we have a world in an international world that requires that response. That is gonna be that the united governing leader in every country or a representative in every country needs to respond to the requirements in every country, and they need to affirm themselves and to find out what is required in order for our people in-house and in our countries to not be so aggressed based on the United Nations legislative response, based on what they respond to based on what they respond to in certain countries, right? And in what their position is in this world, right? It's something that I'm still trying to find my way around when the world looks like this and when there's so much happening, and then I'm questioning myself every day, having to learn what is it that the United Nations governing body then stands for. And therefore it is important that everyone in-house and in offices needs to listen to how they're going to manage these processes, with how they're going to own their seats with where they are at currently. It is that everyone has been employed, but no one is there. The world is looking like there's no one there, right? And every country and certain countries are looking like they are ignorant to the next country's abuse or to the next country's depression, right? Every country is excited to prove themselves as having to be the country that are first world country, while there's countries that are going through abuse, that are going through depression, that are going through lots of arguments, and then it's like everyone's focus is just when someone comes to ask for a helping hand, then our leaders are there to assist, right? But when the world looks so abused, then everyone is there to find a way around it to keep the world in that. That some people I've mentioned before are arrogant in their ways, and then they would explain to you that people would have to find employment, right? Then it's easy for me to explain to you that when people need to find employment, then make it easy for people to find employment. Then get all of these rules that were ruling the world, get it out of our ways, right? There's a new world order that is still in process, and that is still abusive, and that has been implemented, and that is still humiliative to our generation. And what we then require is we do not want to the whole time be aggressed about the circumstances in our countries, but we want our parliamentary officers and our parliamentary houses and our parliamentary leaders to really listen to that there is them being appointed in the countries. When you are appointed, you own your seat as to what is your requirement, what is your job description, what is it that you're gonna have to do, and what is it that you are actually doing, right? It is there that the aggressed community of people in our generation are not aggressed because they are mentally challenged, are not aggressed because they don't want to be employed, are not aggressed because they are the poverty part of the generation. No, they are aggressed because of the way that our generation are being led is abusive, is oppressive, and is humiliative. And when we form part of a generation, and I'm Rabia Elise, and I sit in my house and I can educate in this way, and I do not do that, and I'm not employed in a business to go and tell the parliamentary leader in a certain country that he needs to own his seat and he needs to manage the house in a way that is non-abusive. And I, Rabia Elise, can voice and I can speak and I can say it and people can hear me, and there's a social page and there's Wi-Fi in my house and I do not say it on that day, then what does it make of me, Rabia Elise? Therefore, Vogue Business is not there only because I'm there in the room, only because I may be at home and having nothing to do. Exactly when you are at home, and exactly when you are not employed, then you own your seat exactly. That is what a Vogue Business is doing, and that is what Rabia Elise is doing, and that is what I continue to do, right? Everyone who knows me in South Africa knows that when I'm on that flight and I'm on my way to South Africa, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into the parliamentary house. I'm going to say, why is my people aggressed? The parliamentary leader says, who are you? I say, I'm Rabia Elise, and South Africa is aggressed. Why is my community people aggressed? Then they would explain to me, or they would say, no, the parliamentary leader is not in the office today, Ms. Rabia, because you again booked that flight and you again flew over from Auckland, New Zealand to South Africa to come and find out why do I feel so tired and exhausted with what is happening in my country. Right? It is that we are born in the womb of our countries, and we are part of humanity, and part of humanity doesn't mean that you have to be a celebrity to go and voice for that. That is going to be fine, to go and educate a generation through a season, to go and say that this is my opinion concerning that situation. Maybe my opinion would be able to be that assistance in that situation. It is that people try to figure out what is it that certain businesses do, what is it that Rabia says so many things for, because this is the world in general, and a Vogue Business is exactly that. A Vogue Business says in this world there's so many people that requires assistance. And if there's more people like Rabia Elise that finds a seat in their houses and that says that I own this business, that I own my voice, that this is my opinion, and that this is where I find myself at in my season, and that this is why I'm not agreeing with the generation that are being abused because of rules and regulations that were set many years ago. But we say when we want to have history become into existence into our generation, then we allow ourselves to be in the currentness of their generation that has history with them in the current generation. I always say it's only a requirement for us to take a seat back. It's not a requirement for us to go to many years of apartheid. It's not a requirement for us to go to 10 steps back. It's a requirement for us to respond in the currentness of our yesterdays. History is our yesterdays and everything in it. And everything that we are required to do is in the today's, is in the currentness of your day. And therefore, when our generation leads with that they say that history is one step back. History is not repeating apartheid. No. History is not taking 10 steps back and being aggressive about the same arguments. No. Because our young children has been educated through that poverty, through those abuses, and we have learned everything that we are required to until this day. That is the currentness of our day. And therefore, in this day, we own the seat of today, that we say that we are Vogue Business. We have an opinion. We sense that something is not right in this world, and we do not agree with it. And we therefore, in our business, voice exactly that we feel that we need to voice for, that people need to hear an opinion on. It is the simpleness of a process that were implemented. And when a process were implemented in South Africa, I've mentioned this before, then the process said, Last week, the process said that you need to have an identity document in order to be employed. You need to have a matric certificate in order to be employed. You need to have worked a few weeks ago at a certain organization, a month ago at a certain organization, not longer than 3 months ago in order to be employed. You need to be this in order to be employed. You need to be white or black or that color in order to be employed. You need to be able to speak English, isiXhosa, in order to be employed. And half of South Africa is in poverty because of 5 rules. And the 5 rules are: you need to be employed, but we don't want you to be employed. We want to give you food, but we don't want you to give you food. It is those things that are abusive that we do not need to argue about, but that we cannot say that the child does not have an employment history of 3 months ago because he's been unemployed 1 year. He didn't have money to go for an identity document. You gave him a 350 rand to be a bit more employed because he needed the money, yes, and he was dependent on that 350 rand, and he told himself he's not going to go and work because the 350 rand was more than enough for every month. The child doesn't have a matric certificate because when the child was in primary school, you made it so difficult for them in the classroom that they left school at the year standard 5 and they went to go and be employed how many years ago? So for you today to require them to have a matric certificate in order to have employment in South Africa is you abusing the child a little bit more. The child is not employed because he did not go to the classroom in the year after his year 5 or year 7, they call it these years. He did not complete those years because that's why he can't speak isiXhosa or English. He can speak Afrikaans. It is the general language in South Africa. The child is not employed because his skin color is not gonna be that you're gonna want. So you're gonna have to find a way to employ the child. And all those legislative rules, there is the protective environment for the South African employee and the community member in South Africa to not be abused by anyone, not by the employer, not by the employee, not by the community member. It is the right of every individual in every country to not be abused, to not be humiliated, to not be bullied, to not be killed out. But the protective requirement of our law, of our legislation, of our parliamentary house is to protect our country in general. And to therefore go and look at those 5 requirements that you have and to go and call it null and void. When you void it, you scratch those requirements off. When the child stands in before you, you start to type their CV for them and to employ the child exactly in manufacturing businesses, in businesses that the child doesn't need to speak English or isiXhosa or Afrikaans, even if they don't want to. Let them do the work that they are required to, and let the businesses be in such a way that you employ one of each so that they can translate the languages for you, so that the communication in our country is better, because such is South Africa, such is this world in general. Our world is an international country, not internally, internationally. They are required to be employed internationally, not internally into South Africa only, but internationally. Look at the international requirement of countries that look at certain countries like South Africa with the different religions, different languages, different nationalities, and therefore learning how to lead the world in general by viewing in on what is happening and by listening to the voice and the sound of the South African on the radio and the podcast and where they are appearing. And when Rabia Elise educates in a business, then she doesn't look at how many people are viewing in on our pages. No, because they are all viewing in, but they are all still abusing even the Rabia that advocates for them to not be abused on that day. It is a generation that would have to learn to decide for themselves what is abusive for you, and what is what you allow upon yourself. It is those arrogance that's in our generation that we are not gonna allow. When we do not allow Jacob Zuma to be abusing someone, then Rabia Elise do not allow anyone that views in on my pages that go and abuse what I'm educating, that go and deprive me, but then I'm actually there voicing for them not to be deprived. It is a generation that stands with one attitude, that they learn that this house on this earth, this universe is one house. There's no two ways about it. No one is gonna deprive no one out of it. It's one house, and every individual are welcome in the house on this earth and in this universe. Every human being, every part of creation are so welcome. Rabia Elisa, you are welcome. There's a sign that says, yes, in church, you are welcome into this place. Spirit of the living God. Why? Because you are not a death spirit. Because you are alive within our very veins. You are welcome on this earth. And whoever deprives the other are depriving your presence from being with us. And therefore we stand against that who deprives the Spirit of God, who is every human being and who exists within every one of our veins. Whether we call it today the atmosphere, whether we call it today a breath of fresh air, whether we call it today a wind that blows, the church speaks of it as the Spirit of God. And the Spirit of God is welcome on this earth, in every human being and in every part of creation. And anyone that still wants to argue with me after this discussion, that still wants to go and abuse one another, yes, our generation even punishes for that. But we are not going to deprive one another to be there the next day. We're going to learn that even Mama University, there's prisons that we can punish with, that we can imprison people, that we do not have to start a war because of it. Yes, if we have to imprison people, I get upset because Donald Trump is a parliamentary leader, and I sometimes feel for parliamentary leaders that is really just stepped out of leadership, and now before there's a voting, then they put the person in prison again. And that's exactly what they're busy with Donald Trump. Yes, he has been involved with a lot of things, but they knew of it before he got to the peace parliamentary seat, right? So that is part of abuses, right? And when we want to now imprison Donald Trump, just when he stepped out of the parliamentary seat, then we need to look at what is our generation of human beings doing in the universe. Because remember the parliamentary presence of God that educated with Donald Trump, and that half of the United States of America and half of the world was listening in unto, is now the same presence of God that they want to go in prison, right? It's now that higher power that was educating in the United States of America, that the international nation was educated, that is the same high presence. Donald Trump, remember, he owns a lot of businesses, so he's an international business owner, and that means the presence of God that is educating our humanity on earth on an international level is exactly now being imprisoned with Donald Trump within his very body and the communication line from that part of the universe. So when a generation learns that there's communication in another part of the universe and they do things like that, then it's manipulation, and we as human beings need to step up for it. We cannot just allow processes like that to just happen. We need to find out, why is Donald Trump imprisoned? Why is he being imprisoned in a time when he was just in the parliamentary seat and he just said that he's going to again stand as parliamentary leader next year, and he mentioned that this now in 2023 to us, and that same presence of God is just now speaking to him, and that same part of the universe, whether we call it the presence of God or that communication from the universe, that is writing all of these interesting films to us, and that is educating us in our offices and in our houses, and how to financially and how to be fine physically on earth, and that has built all these amazing houses and these stunningnesses that we see around us, right? And these clothing communications is the same educative presence that is with Donald Trump, right? And now what the United States of America Parliamentary House are doing, they are now depriving and humiliating that communication line. Remember, when there's abuses like that, our generation also needs to speak up and needs to prevent those abusers from looking like humanity wants to now deprive another part of the universe. It seems like humanity is in argument with another part of the universe. And what does humanity then go and do? Humanity go and ad hoc that presence in a prison cell, and that presence was still busy walking and educating our generation through a journey and through a season. And it is all of those manipulations that we need to think about, that when Rabia says, I have a business, and you still do not question, you listen to what is it that Rabia is doing. If you do not agree with what she's saying, then do not listen to her further. Then step away from listening onto her Vogue pages. Then do not listen in on what she's educating in a season. But do not go and abuse that presence that is educating with Rabia on earth, that is coming at a certain time when Rabia says, my Vogue page is going to speak at that time. Then do not go and hinder that. Do not go and interfere with that communication line. I have said on my page, and everyone was thinking, what does Rabia mean with the communication line? I mean exactly the amazing films that has been written, yes, the amazing houses that has been built, yes, the amazing streets that are directing us in this world, yes, the amazing office environments, yes, the amazing processes that we have been implemented. And the main importance is that I'm not gonna not say 2021 when I was in the 350 line. You know what? The universe educated this Rabia Elise, that on this earth Rabia Elise is something that you call a post office box. And every human being has got a post office box. And every human being has got communication that comes from that part of the universe and that comes onto earth and that actually educates our generation on earth. And when our post office box are being intervened with, then our generation gets aggressive. It's the communication of every human being. And the universe, Mama Universe educated me. I'm just looking for something quickly. Mama Universe educated me that I didn't even put my tissue paper there. Pardon for that. Mama Universe educated, but do not even be disrupted by me when I get disrupted by a lot of things. Other than that, let me just say that the post office box, Mama Universe educated me that there's a post office box on earth, and that post office box is exactly the communication line of every individual. And every individual's communication comes to a certain part of every country, and those communications need to get to us in a certain way. And there's been people who has been managing those processes, and we are requiring those people to manage the processes in a way that's going to be non-abusive. I'm just going to I have to get something quickly, otherwise I will be disrupted, and I have to finish explain this to you, otherwise you will not understand exactly what Rabia Elise means with our season and with our discussion. Let me just quickly get for me a tissue paper quickly, just a moment. Pardon me for that. Yes, pardon me for that. Yes, but that's good. So that communication line, yes, it is a office box, post office box. Certain people has been managing those communication lines unheard of every country. And that communication line is communications that people now are trying to control other people. Remember, half of South Africa is in drugs already, right? And the half of South Africa that finds themselves in drugs are those boys that's communication lines are being intervened with. So that type of group of people that is exactly managing that process and that is exactly managing that is aggressing the boys, right? If the boys gets aggressed, the boys gets communications while they are sleeping in the midnight, that communication line are being managed. The intercom at schools are really exactly telling us of that. It's like an intercom that people speak into, but it is your part of your human body. The South African people, there's a group of people in South Africa that is already, they are being investigated because they have interfered with that communication line of certain people, and certain people are being oppressed. They are being told to do things while they are sleeping, and they get up and then they go and do things. It's like people tell you that when you are mentally sleeping and people mentally speak to you, then you go and do exactly that. So there's a group of people in South Africa that sits in offices that exactly do that to the South African people, to the drug people in our communities. These people are being investigated, yes. They are being monitored, yes. They are part of the New World Order team, yes. They are part of the processes of the job that I was working at Whakarangaroa, and the list of names that I saw that I gave loudly on my computer when I was employed in Auckland, New Zealand in 2022 at Whakarangaroa, the list of names, yes, that whole process was a New World Order process. There was a lot that has happened and that I have mentioned, and there's a lot of investigations that are happening in those processes. It was a lot of people also I've mentioned before on my pages from PAL community that names were on those lists, but they didn't know, and they are not part of the process, no, but their names were on a New World Order list of managing our generation in general. And that to me was a problem when I was employed there. And I was now really now not going to be the Rabia that resigns out of the office. No, because when I learned that this is the process, someone called me to the office for a reason. They employed me for a reason. So I would not say that person is guilty. No, that person maybe felt that people needs to know this, right? And that person employed me for a reason, because that person maybe was involved in this process that person did not maybe agree with. And when that person called me and they approved my CV and they employed me, they exactly know the type of person that they were employing. They exactly know how loud I can be. They exactly know how many flights I took to South Africa and how loud I was about it. They exactly knew everything about me, because remember, every flight that I took to South Africa, to the parliamentary house and to the prime ministry, to the PAL community political leader member, was exactly from New Zealand to South Africa. So when that person employed me, that person exactly knew what they were doing, and they exactly were probably not wanting to really now not say it, but they had to say it in that way. Maybe they were involved in it for some reason, I don't know. And then they employed me, and then when I saw the details, who was I? The Rabia that got on a flight, and a loud noise, was loud about it, and I was shouting, and the police and everything was outside my house. And I was like, you know what? This is a New World process, and this is non-negotiable. This is non-acceptable. We do not know who's busy with it, but we have a lot that we need to get right now in our generation. And we know that the New World process maybe needed to be implemented in a way that someone didn't want to listen to someone when someone else said, but the process should be implemented in this way. And then someone else wanted to control our generation, and then it became a problem. So it was not that someone was not only trying to abuse us. No, I've mentioned it before, that someone was meaning to do what I'm explaining in our season, that is the office environment, that is that we are restructuring our generation in general, but someone else wanted to abuse the situation, right? And when people want to abuse the situation, you know, someone always wants to put someone else in danger. Someone always wants to blame it on someone else. And that can also be the circumstances of this New World Order, because everyone who employed me at Whakarangaroa, emergent, yes, Daphne and Umer, Turkish people, we have empathy for what has happened in Turkey, but the world is exactly that. The world is exactly abusing one another. Some leaders are busy in a lot of discussions, and no one wants to be managed, and no one wants to have someone else say what they should do, but everyone else in the world is also gonna sometimes say that we sometimes just need y'all to listen to how y'all can manage us in a way that is non-abusive. And that is where what happens in our generation is the Turkish film Umer and Daphne that speaks exactly about me, Rabia Elise, when I was working at Bulan Bolded years. They call me the Daphne years, with the black legs years, with the fashion business years, when I was working with Justin also sorry to mention the names, but I have to, because there's a lot of communications and meetings that is happening in this world that involves these people, that involves businesses that I've been employed with. It has got nothing to do with me, but these business managers has had meetings and discussions already for years before Rabia Elise. So when I got to Boelan, I just heard the managers are having meetings with international people. No one is talking about it. No one knows what is happening in this world. And the only thing that they did is they just had me at the office so that I can just listen to not what they are saying in person, because I always say it was not in person discussion, but just the environment that is happening around us, so that we sometimes know when people are in our country and there's international challenges happening, then you don't go and blame Justin Oates for it. No, you don't go and blame the Europeans in Niblibits. No, there's a lot of discussions that involves every country, and that involves all of our people in our countries. So when you look at the situation internationally, and you'll understand that the international generation of leaders are busy discussing so much that has got to do with the management of our countries, then do not go and abuse international managers in our countries. No, because some of them really allowed me to be in their offices, and they exactly know the loud type of person I am. They exactly know how crazy I am. They exactly did their reference checks, years, and they exactly know exactly everything about Rabia Elise. So they didn't call me to have discussions with me. No, they called me so that I can listen to what is happening in our world. How can it affect our countries? What is happening when I sense around me, when I look around me, when I listen to what is happening concerning our generation. That is why certain people employ you. They don't employ you to keep you in a what they say, to keep you involved in certain discussions. No, they employ you with all directness, and they really do all the reference checks, and they really decide upon that, because they are really part of discussions that are really involving a lot of management in our generation, and that needs to be corrected. So South African government and South African people do not get aggressed with our international managers that has moved to South Africa and that has managed their businesses, because there's a lot that the world can do, right? Because even the European countries, yes, there's a lot of African people and South Africans in Europe, and those Europeans are welcome in Europe. My sister Antoinette, yes, she made it clear on a trip in South Africa in 2022 with all her children, 4 children that was born in Europe, and they are going to university, and we are excited about it. And the Europeans has really looked after the South Africans very well. So do not abuse the international leaders that are managing discussions in our countries, that they do not want to take over South Africa. No, but there's a lot of abuse happening in South Africa that they are trying to manage, and they are trying to prevent abuse to further happen in our countries. Yes, South Africa is an amazing country, and we really love their opinions on our countries. But you know, Europe is also an amazing country, and they are not there because they don't have a Europe and because they want to take over our Africa. No, they are there to educate us on how to manage, and I have been educated in all of those offices, and all of those educations is really my voice in season, and everything that I say is really exactly that. So do not get aggressed with any discussions that involve international businesses in our countries. That is for our community people in our countries. Another thing that I want to say, yes, so what happens is there's a lot of businesses that wants to buy into our countries, but we're gonna have to listen to, we're not going to say that no one is wrong with what they want to do, but we want everyone to listen to how the people that are there are managing the situation. And when other people have opinions, what we learn from the Europeans that are in South Africa is when you introduce yourself to the South African community, then you have an opportunity to communicate directly, right? Rather than people that are managing South Africa from international countries, and then they are not even in South Africa, then they stir a lot of aggression in South Africa, because then they are sending lots of messages back and forth, and then the people that are in South Africa that are international people, then sometimes are are endangered by those international people that communicates into the country. So remember what I say, there's business owners that communicates into the country, and then there's business owners that has got employees in the country, and their direct communication is always very important, and we should not be aggressed when we have our direct communication when people introduces themselves to us, because that's exactly how the international people at Nibblebird said it's in South Africa, the international people at Boerenbaldert, how they introduced themselves to Rubia Elise the person. And therefore, when we learn that there's communications from international people that also maybe as businesses, and they then want to abuse the country, then it's always good for those international people and for our parliamentary leaders in-house to invite those people to our countries to introduce themselves directly, rather than communicating into our country, and then they don't even communicate into the parliamentary house. No, they communicate to people in the community, and that's a problem. It's people internationally, they communicate to the community people, and the processes are chaotic, and when the South Africans get aggressive, then South Africans sometimes get aggressive with the international person that is in the country, and that is sometimes not fine, and we do not do that, and we do not abuse one another. We know that every business owner they are in competition with one another, they are all competitors, but we also have to educate our South African community properly so that they are not in misunderstanding or misinterpretation of what is happening and what is the international communications that sometimes relates to all of these abuses in our countries, right? So yeah, many people were looking at certain international people and saying, oh, but they are aggressive, they are rude to our people. And then that was not actually the voice from the person. That was actually because people came, they be employed into the business, and then they complain. But the complaint is not that. The complaint is that they are communicating with other people internationally, and that tells them to go and aggress businesses and business owners, because everyone are competing. South Africa is an amazing country, but we also do not want to sell South Africa over to the world, right? Another thing that I want to mention while saying this, the cross-contamination is another thing that I want to mention before I say this, the cross-communication that can happen in the countries. So that's cross-communication. It's an international person that are internationally, and there's international people that owns businesses that are in the countries direct. So those communications that comes from international people into our communities are communications that should be managed by our parliamentary house, exactly, because we do not need our countries to be abused more with communications that are abusive because other people want to manipulate our South Africa. Another thing that I want to say about our South Africa is that our businesses, yes, are gonna move into that. I want to say this quickly because I've mentioned that just before we finish and conclude with today's talk and with today's discussion. I want to say that the international business owners that owns businesses in South Africa, I have to talk slow about it because I'm sensitive just about this, what I want to say. The international, they say, Rupia, you talk very fast, and then we don't want to listen because you chase us already out of the room. So I'm not chasing you out of the room with this one. Listen to it. Why do I chase people out of the room? Because people need to decide for themselves when they listen to Rubia. Is Rubia a person that you listen to? Are you leading this world and listening to Rubia also? Or is Rubia someone that, that person doesn't know what they're talking about, right? And then I chase you out of my room with that fast talking. Fast talking means I chase you out of the room because you are already entering my discussion and you are already coming in with that mindset of not wanting to accept that Rubia's opinion is even an opinion that even is there in the currentness of your leadership position. And sometimes you just have to accept that in this generation. Some people have to accept that. It's very funny. But many people are really so ignorant and arrogant in them leading this world, that when I talk, they sometimes are being required to listen to Rubia's video, and then I give them a chase out of the room. Why? Because when they run out of the room, and they are not continuing to listening to me, then they are a leader that are abusing our generation. Why? Because Rabia is not wrong with what she says. I'm very professional with what I do, and I'm very intelligent. Yes, I'm highly intelligent, and I know exactly how to manage all these situations. So I'm not testing the managers, no, but those managers who has really not listened to me, they really should be double checked, right? I'm not talking about the managers that I've been employed with. No, I'm talking about managers that leads this world and that leads businesses in this world that have clicked on my video, and the moment they click on it, they find a fault with it. They cannot manage our generation because they're gonna find the fault with our generation every day. Because how I got up to go and get my tissue is exactly that happens in our generation. And when I get up in your meeting and I go get my tissue, then you do not feel embarrassed about the situation. Lots of things happens around Rabia Elise. Why? Because the universe is an amazing place. Africa is an amazing place. Africa is amazing. Travel to it and you will know what Rabia Elise is all about. And I give you all of Africa in one day. And what I want to say is this. Before we give you Africa, because I love to give you Africa, so that we know what is that is managing our generation, right? And how they are managing our generation. So a moment of Africa is always good. Another thing that I want to say is this. Managers that are in our countries, yeah, all jokes aside, let me just say this quickly. Managers that are in our countries, that are managing our countries, no, that are owning businesses in our countries, right? I got to PAL community in 2020. And I wanted, not in 2020, in 2018, I was employed already for a nice time in New Zealand already, or in 2018. And I was really employed and I really had financial stability. And I really wanted to rent a business for my Evoke business in South Africa. And for my purpose, yes, Evoke purpose, yes. And I really came to really educate our generation. And when I wanted to rent a business, I was really told that most of the businesses in our community belongs to a business owner that is a European. And you tell Rabia Elise that is South African, that this was not gliding into South Africa. My mama Martha didn't glide into South Africa. She's from Africa. Africa is South Africa. So I didn't glide in, no. I'm really South African, right? And when I'm South African, and I fly to South Africa, and my finances is fine, and I want to come and rent a business in South Africa, and I want to rent it not on my name, because my name has got a Capitec Bank loan on, and not ASB, what's that other in New Zealand? We don't have loans. In South Africa gives you loans all the time. I've got a Capitec loan and I've got an African Bank loan. So I cannot have managed it in my name, no. But in my my brother's daughter's name, Rusay Peterson. Yes, Rusay Peterson, she's highly intelligent like her Auntie Rabia Elise, so do not abuse my Rusay Peterson. Not in businesses, not in social pages. She's very highly intelligent. What I want to say is this, my brother Richard's daughter is very highly intelligent. When she needs to be employed, you employ her because she's exactly a double portion of Rabia Elise. The Bible says when the baby comes out, it's a double portion. Yes, Rusay Peterson is a double, triple portion. Double, triple portion. She's exactly African American from Mama Anna's side. She's exactly African American from Rachel Peterson's side. They exactly look like the African Americans. They have family there from Africa. We have family there from Africa. All in America, we are all internationally. She's a double portion. So honestly, when she's employed, do not abuse her. And she's also like us. Really, I'm a bit lenient with abusing officers, but some of my family members, no one wants to work because no one wants to be abused. And our family is just like that because they are firm in where they are at in our generation and their birth womb, Mama Anna. Yeah, they're very firm about that, and that's why they are not employed. They're not arrogant about it, no. They're just firm about their position in our generation, and when they are not exactly there, then they are not going to deprive and abuse themselves of where they are at, right? It's one thing my brother who's on drugs always educates to me. Rabia, is one thing if I come and break our house down. But it's another thing if someone else comes and they break our house down, and that's what I adore of my brother Anton. He breaks our house down and he says, you know what, this is how this world is looking. We are Mama Anna Ikis, we are Rabia Anna, Antoinette Anna, Zach Anna, brother Martin Anna, brother Anton Anna, and Rusay Peterson, Rachel Anna Iki, yes, and Peterson, and all of our Anna Ikis. But it's one thing if someone else comes and they pull the plug out of our roof and the house is without electricity. It's another thing if I, brother Anton, do it. Why do I do it, Rubia? Because someone else has done it before I have done it. I say, how they do it, brother Anton? He doesn't explain to me with words. He says, that municipality and all those meetings that you had and all those going to the municipality that you had is exactly that I now pull all of these plaques out, because I had also enough of that municipality meetings that you have to fly to South Africa the whole time to have a meeting, because they are abusing our household and then they are acting like they do nothing wrong. They are managing a new world order in our house and then they are acting like they're doing nothing wrong. So yes, Rakan State Municipality, all those communications, we are managing those processes and we are going to deal with that. Thank you, China and Putin, for dealing with that also. Another thing that I wanted to say is this. Thank you, China and Putin, for managing that situation. But Putin, we don't want to say your name because we really do not agree also with Zelensky sitting like that. So you and Zelensky all said there's going to be a peace deal, but we're not going to say it, but we even say it. Other than that, we know you are a very good leader, Putin, because you are very good mafia, because you know exactly all the mafia-ness in this world. And we do not ignore that we have been introduced to the mafia world. When I was employed as a bar lady, I was going through the club lives and I learned that there's a requirement for mafia leaders to be on this earth for certain reasons, yes. So Putin, very good. You're very good. You're a very good presidential leader. And we have learned that you are a very good intelligent agent. Yes, we do not know if you are mafia or if you are an intelligent agent that really investigates countries in this way, but you are very good with what you are doing. But we cannot even overlook the fact that Zelensky has been sitting there now for days, and then they tell Rabia Elise that Zelensky is going to sit there for more days. I can't accept that. That's the only thing that I don't agree with. I really think there's always a way for you all to discuss through matters and to find out how you all are going to manage the situation better. That is just my opinion. Rabia Elise, I'm all about that. Another thing that I want to say, yes, when international business owners own businesses in South Africa, how can you tell me, Rabia Elise, that I now have to go and rent a business from an international business owner? I'm born South African womb. Mama Anna is Africa, all international. And I now need to go and rent a business from someone who sits in Europe, but he owns my whole PAL community. I could not agree with that. Who implemented that? How did the government manage that process? How can I go and rent a building from him? He needs to rent a building from me. He needs to rent a building from South Africa, not South Africa renting from him. No, that process is wrong. It's null. It's void. I do not rent from you. You rent from the South African government, and the South African community member rents from the government itself, whom is communicating with you and who you then rent from. Communicated right, people, because when you explain that to me, then I get on another flight and I'm another way of grace, because your way of explaining it to me was wrong in 2020. You all said Rabia, he's an international business person. He's not a South African, and he owns the whole PAL community. And I say he owns my PAL community. My Papa Yapi has built the whole cities of PAL community. My Papa Yapi was employed at Draken State Municipality after he was finished building Draken State Municipality. My Papa Yapi, he built the whole police city there in PAL community. Now, how can you tell this Rabia Elise that I now need to go and rent by that international person, and then I rent my South African PAL community? No, my Papa has built it. He has built it. Whole PAL community was employed. There's this big photo of my Papa Yapi in Draken State Municipality. When you enter Draken State Municipality, my Papa is standing there, Brother Martin is standing there. Yes, they were employed at Draken State Municipality. Thank you, Draken State, for honoring our parents' rights. Thank you. Yes, they have built all of those buildings, and you cannot tell me that I now need to go and ask for Europe to rent a building there. Get those processes right, because when I come to South Africa again, and when I'm financially ready, and when I really want to rent, and you'll tell me all of that again, get the process right. He rents from the South African government. The South African government then rents to the employee, to the person, and we directly communicate to the South African government. We do not communicate to him, because between the renting of him into South Africa, however he buys in is he rent in. He doesn't buy in. No, he's never gonna own it. He rents into the country, because the building is always gonna be a South African building. Yeah, so he rents into the country. You get those terminologies right, you get those processes right. I need to overdo my nose, because my nose is fading away and I do not have money for it. Get the processes right, because the vote business is really educating, and we really need all of those finer details thoroughly right in all of those processes. What I wanted to say is that is another thing. Another thing that I want to say there, but honestly, I can make good jokes, but I'm very, very odd about it. Yeah, so get that process. That's one of the processes that we need, right? Thank you, everyone. They buy in a certain way. South African government pays them back for the building that they have bought in South Africa. South African government directly pays them back. They then have a building in South Africa that they are renting to buy, or not renting to buy, because they're not ever going to buy it. The ownership is always going to be South African ownership. And that's what we need to get right, so that we don't get to a South Africa and then all the buildings belongs to all the international people. Get those final processes right. When y'all are having these discussions, involve me either through don't send me those YouTube videos that y'all are sending during the road, because it's really when I wake up on that on a Monday morning with all of those jokes and the rudenesses, then I can be also very rude. So, but what I want to say, when we own our country, owning your seat, when we own our country, I say that for all of those YouTube leaders and the celebrities in New Zealand, they are all working on my nerves on an early morning when I wake up, and they are working with Dorian, and they are all aggressing me. So I really want people who manages these television stations and these YouTube channels to not abuse my household and to not abuse my Kiara. They are doing that with my Kiara also. She's listening to YouTube videos and they keep her busy the whole day, and then they abuse her the whole day with the videos that they shift through on YouTube. People who manages those processes, the details that you send through on my daughter, I'm gonna reprimand you, and you're gonna be punished for it. Whoever abuses my house, I am not allowing abuse on my house. I am not allowing it. New Zealand television, I tell you also, you have made a lot of changes, because you've heard I'm very firm about it. But South Africa, you'll now communicate to New Zealand directly without realizing that Rabia listens and knows everything before she knows it. She knew what you were doing before you were doing it. So please, people, when you are trying to abuse Rabia, at least think of all the leaders in the world and all the community people in this world that really respect and appreciate Rabia's opinion. And when you want to abuse my house through television channels and television rooms and all of your people that are in these houses, then I'm gonna reprimand y'all, and you're gonna be punished, and y'all don't come and ask Rabia why y'all are punished about it, right? Y'all do not come and ask me, but do not abuse my household. South Africa, do not communicate to New Zealand to abuse my house. Stop those communications. I'm gonna reprimand y'all. Yes, y'all are doing it constantly, and y'all are working with those New World people that are really irritating, and it's very irritating. Don't do that, because the world is gonna punish y'all for it. And people tune in on y'all's Googles. People exactly know who of y'all are doing it, and y'all are not gonna go and punish other South African people about it. It's the celebrity house in South Africa, exactly. It's the radio stations in South Africa, exactly. It's all of those radio stations, all of y'all that communicates and that sends these messages and that controls our houses in this way. I'm gonna punish all of y'all about it. But for now, I'm really busy with the parliamentary leaders. Let me just say this. When you own a business, but you are renting it from the South African government. You have bought into it, but you are in a renting of the premises, because the business is forever going to be a South African grounded business. The business is never going to be belonging to a European business manager. No, I think when my nose gets like that, then we are done talking, right? Pardon for that, but this is Africa in me. Now I get aggressive about it, right? Thank you. The business is never gonna be a South African owned. The business is never gonna be you owning the business, and the half of the time you want to own the whole of South Africa. I'm not, the RBI list is not gonna allow that process. You're gonna work through a process, and the process is gonna be very firm on you manage the business, yes, you own the business, but you rent the business from the South African government that owns the building itself. There is something, the business and everything belongs to you, the building and everything, and it stands on is on South African grounds, on holy grounds. Yes, do not get it wrong. The business is standing on holy grounds. You own your own business, that is everything that you put inside of it. But everything that it's building and the ground that is standing is South African ownership. Get it right, get the terminologies right, get it into this, into the laws and legislations right, so that we not have arguments that people want to say now they own South Africa in general, because the South African people is not gonna agree with it. South African people might be arguing a lot with one another, but we are not gonna agree with the fact that you educate. No, not educate. We are not gonna agree with the fact. Sorry for my wording, that's wrong. We are not gonna agree with the fact. Y'all know Rabia can get very crazy. We are not gonna agree with the fact that international people is now gonna say that they own South Africa about a business that is now in debt. No, we're not gonna accept that. When a business is in debt, you see, I need to get my words right. When you are in, when a business is in debt in you, the business belongs to South Africa. South African government finds a way to pay you off for your debt, and we do exactly that. But you do not come and own South Africa about it, and you do not come and claim South Africa about it. Let's get the laws right. Let's get the legislative part of that right, and let's learn that when you're an international business owner, and I come and rent a business, I rent it from the South African government. I'm a South African employee, I'm a South African citizen, and I exactly rent the business from the South African government and not from you. And you're not owning it. No international person is owning it. Ruby, I least directly say it to you. The South African government owns the businesses and no international people owns it. They are directly on a renting list. We're still going to call it a renting. A renting, yes, you rent the building, the ground that it's on. And if you do not rent the ground that it's on, and you're forced to own the business, then we've been discussing about it, because you cannot own our South Africa. No. You people that are internationally, you rent from the South African government. The South African, you rent own. Rent own means that you do not own the business, you do not own the premises and the grounds that it's standing on. You own exactly only your business itself. Get the terminologies right, get everything right, so that there's no argument in the room. That is it for our Vogue discussion today, and for our leading this generation discussion today. And let Rubia not get aggressed about it, but that's where we want to be at. So I explained one thing, and you'll go and discuss it in all of the areas of business owners that are international. Rubia explains to you all, you'll find out legislatively what is the wording and how do the international business owners listen to the word owning a business, right? Because the building and the grounds means that you can never come and claim South Africa about it. No, you can never come and claim South Africa about it, and you can never come and kill our people out about it. No, you own the ground, you own the business itself, and the ground is South African ground, Rebea Lisa's ground, my wombness, my voice that I speak from, the womb in the universe, the parentingness of Mama Anna, the Africanness that Mama Anna, Mama Martha probably came from somewhere in Africa, wherever all the people came from, and all the Papayapinesses and the colorednesses in our family, we are owning our South Africa, and everyone else is renting it, right? Let's get the terminologies right, because Papa Yapi has worked so hard for Paarl community, for building the amazing town in Paarl community, that you know what, when Rabia was 1.5 years old, then Papa Yapi got ill because of all the things that he breathes in. Yes, he was drinking a little bit of a beer, but he didn't get ill only from the beer because of all the buildings that he has built in Paarl community. So Paarl community, do not abuse Rubia when I come and rent my building, because I am very, very firm about my papa that has built all of those amazingnesses there. Yes, and that has worked in the queer career. My papa did all of the nice farmings, yes. Also, yes, amazing. Do not abuse our children and do not abuse our country. And let's not get in aggression, and let's educate right concerning our countries. And that is it for Rubia Elise today for what I wanted to say. Yes, my brother Martin is still there. His photo is very big there in Drakensberg municipality. Brother Martin, yes, he was employed with my Papa Yapi. Yes, they all were there in teams. Papa Martin was after Papa Yapi, they employed. And they were all there employed at Drakensberg municipality. So yes, do not abuse our children's rights to be in our countries. And that is it for our discussion today with Leading This Generation. May you have an amazing season further.